At 91 years old, Pat Boone has finally opened up about one of the most iconic and influential figures in American music history, Elvis Presley. For decades, Boone and Presley were often mentioned in the same breath during discussions of 1950s rock and roll. Both were teen idols, both transformed the music scene, and both carried immense influence. But behind the polite nods and the public interviews, fans always wondered what Boone really thought about the so-called king of rock and roll. Now, for the first time, he's telling his truth, and it's more complex than anyone expected. During a quiet, heartfelt sit-down interview for a documentary exploring the roots of American rock and gospel music, Pat Boone shared personal insights and reflections about Elvis, painting a picture of their relationship that was far deeper, and at times, more complicated, than the media ever let on. He began by recalling the early days when both he and Elvis were climbing the charts. Boone's clean-cut image and smooth vocal style were worlds apart from Elvis's rebellious charisma and hip-shaking stage presence, yet both were dominating teenage hearts and radio airwaves. According to Boone, there was never the bitter rivalry that some fans speculated about. "The truth is," Boone said, "we weren't enemies. We were competitors, yes. But there was also a strange kind of brotherhood there, an understanding. We were two young men with the world suddenly at our feet, navigating fame, pressure, and temptation." Boone admitted that he initially didn't understand Elvis's appeal. "He was wild, and I wasn't. I used to wonder, why does he do all that on stage? Why the hips, the snarl? But when I saw the effect it had on the crowd, I understood. He wasn't performing for critics, he was performing for the people." But the most touching parts of Boone's revelations came when he talked about Elvis offstage. Boone described him as shy, almost boyish in private, someone who often seemed overwhelmed by the very fame he had chased. Boone remembered late-night conversations the two would occasionally have when they happened to cross paths at events or on the same TV shows. "He'd ask me about faith," Boone said, "about God, about how I managed to stay grounded. He was always curious, always searching." Boone revealed that one of their last real conversations occurred just a few years before Elvis's untimely death. "The king," as he recalled, "was weary. He told me he felt like a puppet sometimes," Boone said quietly. He said the fans wanted a version of him he wasn't sure he could keep being. And the drugs, he didn't call it an addiction. But he knew he wasn't well. Boone paused, then added, "I think Elvis was more spiritual than people gave him credit for. But he was surrounded by noise, constant, unrelenting noise. And that's a hard place to find peace." Pat Boone also admitted that he regrets not staying in closer contact with Elvis in those final years. "There's always that voice in the back of your mind that says, you could have reached out. You could have done more. But fame isolates people, even from each other." He said he cried when he heard the news of Elvis's death in 1977. "It didn't seem real. He was only 42. It was heartbreaking." Now, decades later, Boone says he feels a sense of responsibility to set the record straight about the man he knew, not the myth. Elvis was not just the king of rock and roll. He was a son, a seeker, and at times, a lonely soul who just wanted to be loved for who he really was. In speaking his truth at 91, Pat Boone has given fans a rare and intimate look into a complicated friendship built not just on fame, but on shared struggles, mutual respect, and moments of quiet vulnerability. It turns out, the truth about Elvis Presley wasn't just about music or legend, it was about the man behind the spotlight.